Can you hear me clearly? Loud and clear everywhere? Over there? Yes. Now let's start, please.
My name is Jason Meisel from Columbus, Ohio, and I'm a guest. And I've been observing you for the past days, and my question is how you became such a wise man.
How, what? Yeah, Joe.
Such a wise man.
Ask God. You see, I don't think I'm a wise man. I know I make so many mistakes. But because of the support of the whole Jamaat, which in a collective, in its collective identity, is a very wise Jamaat. So what I reflect is the wisdom of the whole Jamaat. They keep teaching me the right things. And this is the beauty of Islam. There is no arrogance whatsoever. Every person involved in the cause of Allah learns from others as well. Right? So if you open your mind to learning and you remain a student all your life, you do create an impression of wisdom, which is the impression of truth in fact. If you are true and you're honest and you're humble, you have to end up being wise. There is no other way. Right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
My name is Pyare Kachru. I am also a guest.
Please. Yes.
My name is Pyare Kachru. I am also a guest.
Right.
I couldn't have the chance to talk to you in the earlier session. I was present. A
Would you
colleague
kindly
of
come
mine.
closer to the microphone? Closer, still closer.
Yes.
Yes.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Do you hear me now?
Huh?
Do you hear me now, please?
Yes, I can, of course. Yes, yes.
A colleague of mine, a chemist. I am also a
On the
chemist.
same level where you asked that question.
Okay.
When you asked me, can you hear me, you were close to the microphone and
Okay.
then you withdrew.
Okay.
Go ahead. Please.
Perchance, he was also a chemist who was putting the last question to you. I also happen to be a chemist. But I believe in God. That's the difference between him and me. But generally, we always start prayers by saying that Lord, protect me from machinations of Satan, the anti-God. My question is, I have another personal question to ask you after this, is if God created the whole universe, why did he create the anti-God, the Satan?
If God did what? That question has been, but before that what he said? Right, okay. You see, do you know the meaning of shaitan?
I don't. Because
You don't?
I don't. Because
So first the question should be, what is shaitan? When it's explained to you, then the next question will drop
of course, sir.
automatically.
Yes.
Right? You see, number one, you should know the difference between angels and men, human beings. We must start from there. The angels are described by the Holy Quran as the creation of God who know no evil, who can't practice evil, they're incapable of evil. They are not provided with those qualities of freedom to defy God and His orders. So they are set on courses like the laws of nature. And for the set courses of laws of nature, there is no reward, nor a punishment if you fail to perform your responsibilities. The question of reward and punishment only come into being with your freedom to make choices, either to do good or to do bad. So the power to choose for the wrong option is called satanic. And whatever forces are responsible for this, they had to be there, otherwise there will be no freedom for you. If satanic forces, the other pole of goodness, were not created, then how could you say we also have a choice either to turn to evil or turn to goodness? Then there will be no difference between you and angels. So it's a new world with new rules to govern this world. The world of freedom of choice. Right?
Yes.
Thank you.
The other question is rather personal. I don't think, I think you won't, you will not mind my saying that. I wanted to know, when you pray and think of God, what exactly image of God comes to your mind?
Yes.
What physical form? Is it a human form or what form?
Understand? That's a very wise question. But that image of God has been presented to us by the very first surah of the Quran, which is also mentioned to be the mother of the whole Quran. That is Surah Fatiha. And the introduction of God there, although it is brief, only 4 attributes of Allah are mentioned. Yet they are so comprehensive that they are roots for, they are fountainheads of all other attributes of Allah. In their permutation, combination, new attributes are born. So if you understand the introduction of Allah from Surah Fatiha, all you need to know is that which is mentioned there. And the prayer is mentioned afterwards, after the introduction.
Yes.
So you say, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All praise is for Allah, or belongs to Allah, who is the provider or the provident or Lord of the entire universe. There is nothing for which He does not provide. And He provides because He is Rahman, Ar-Rahman. Ar-Rahman means even before something is created, He takes care of all its future needs. So He does not wait for things, to beg for things. He knows the requirements of everything He creates. So without their asking, He provides for them. Now these and similar introductions, if studied in depth, provide a universe of meaning, and sometimes you can't finish your contemplation of seeing the word Rahman alone for years upon years of your concentration. It's not just a loud claim. I can give the example. Before the creation, all the requirements of all the animals which were to be created and which were to be supported by the life system, all the requirements of man as he developed, right from his early period of creation to the end of his progress, have already been taken care of by Rahman, who has given these things although there was no one to ask for them, and provided these things even before the first Big Bang which resulted in the creation of the universe. Now, the example. Only one simple example would suffice, which I often give because it's so understandable commonly. You know, man was created, and until his knowledge of how to use coal reached a stage where he could manipulate that knowledge, he didn't discover coal. It was there, all buried around him, but he didn't know what it was. But as he progressed, and his mind was evolved to a stage where he needed coal for running steam engines and machineries and things, and there the coal was there, only to be used. And from then on, you know, the firewood could not have served the purpose of coal or the function of coal. And when people started talking of the exhaustion of the sources of coal, they were talking of this. Read any Scientific American of 100 years ago, and that is to say, read any Scientific American of today, and it has a small chapter dedicated to what was known to man, what was invented by man and things, 100 years ago. And you'll be amazed at the little knowledge man had at that time. But he was provided for everything which he knew, which he wanted to know, which he wanted to employ. So coal was being discussed. What shall we do when the resources of coal are exhausted? By that time, they had not yet invented the aeroplane the aeroplane was invented early this century, in the beginning of the century, in 1905 or 4. Now the point is, there was oil everywhere underneath the surfaces, but they didn't know. There was no knowledge of its existence. If at all they had any knowledge, they were unaware of its nuisance value, no more. But when the age of aeroplane came, when the age of internal combustion engines, the motor car and things, arrived, then suddenly man's attention was drawn to the large resources of oil lying around him, untapped and unused. And then he knew, what could science do if the material was not there? Then come to the present age, when people really started getting worried about the exhaustion of these resources, the atomic energy came to their help. Inexhaustible stores of atomic energy. And with the atomic energy, the requirements expanded. They needed more material to sustain the intense heat, to make crucible for such intense heat and things. And new metals were discovered. New alloys were discovered. But that also had a limitation. The crucibles the science needed at the level of progress man had reached required absolutely enormous calories to be handled, of heat to be handled. So we are talking of millions maybe. Yes. But how could any metal provide that crucible? Then God guided man to the magnetic crucibles, invisible ones. And now he's capable of cooking things within an unseen crucible which is made of intense magnetic fields. Nothing can fall. You can melt things at the highest temperature and do this and that, and nothing will fall out. Don't you see the meaning of Rahman in all this?
Actually,
but that's
very clear.
These are the area. That is just one small area. I have not yet spoken on Rububiyat, but it's Rabbul Alameen. It's a vast subject of ecology, of support system of life, of how the provisions, the waste product of one is utilized as provisions for life of others, and the perfect balances, and how the waste material is utilized and buried so that it becomes innocuous, it does not hurt, cannot hurt anybody. This is a science which is still completely beyond, not completely but mostly beyond the reach of scientists to understand how it's happening, how it's brought about. And when man interferes, then he comes to problems. When he makes things with his design industry, there's a problem of pollution, how to bury that waste, how to exploit the situation of the poor countries, to dump their dangerous waste on their soils, etc. These questions arise with the man-made machineries. For instance, here I also draw your attention to a simple fact which should be understandable by all the audience. We require fertilizers for all the growth on earth, because without fertilizers the life of any form could never have developed and proceeded. Fertilizers are needed for the basic support of the vegetative growth. Now, who made those fertilizers and how? Before the advancement of science to make synthetic fertilizers by huge industry, etc. Who provided the system of water transport? Who conceived the system of purification of seawater? And also at the same time, its carriage to high mountains, to be condensed there, and then drop on the tops of mountains and flow in the direction of the plains which needed that. But what of water if there is no fertilizer? It will go waste. Now the fantastic plan, which requires the pre-existence of the wisest of planners and creators, is that the same process by which the water is filtered is responsible for the creation of electricity which is needed for all this machinery to run. When water evaporates, the very act of evaporation creates electrical charges of positive nature and negative nature. And at different levels, at different places, they change their position. Sometimes the positive electricity is left below and the negative is what rises with the clouds. In other places, the negative rises with the clouds and the positive is left below, but it is neutralized by the Earth's electrical charge. But of that we're not concerned. What we know is that all clouds are charged with immense electrical charges, so powerful that the negative and the positive can jump for hundreds of yards across. And it is that jumping of electricity which is responsible, which is essential for the condensation of vapors to small droplets. Without it, it's not possible. No amount of clouds could materialize into water, back into water, if this electricity which is generated at the very phenomenon of their rise, at the very beginning of their rise, reverses the process, and those electric charges you see, most awe-inspiring things. They are responsible not only for this, but they are the Allah's industry for producing fertilization. It's so amazing. The same electrical charges which which make the clouds revert to its original form of water, they are so powerful that they create ozone, they create other chemical changes, and the nitrogen in the air gets mixed up with hydrogen, oxygen and carbon, so that very rich fertilizers are created during the process of raining. And in one day, what this machinery of Allah creates in the way of fertilizers cannot be created in the whole year by all the industry of man. But that man-made industry has its problems of waste products. There is no waste product in that system anywhere. And yet, you don't know what Rububiyyat is? Without this fantastic provision of water, it is carried through winds, on the shoulders of winds in certain directions, and its fall on the mountains, and then the temperature control at the mountain is that there is always a reserve created there. Otherwise, it was not essential to build Himalayan heights or other mountains of very lofty stature. They are created to reach the level where the temperature will be so low that all the year long they retain some of the water which has fallen upon them. So it doesn't have to be a monsoon all the year long. If it were a monsoon all the year long, even then life on earth could not be supported, could not be maintained. So it's a fantastic way. The stores of water which are reserved there in the form of ice follow laws specifically created for the purpose of maintaining the source of water supply, maintaining the water supply requirement. It's a strange law that only exists in case of water and ice. Ice, when pressed, creates heat. Ice generates heats, and the heat at the lowest level of pressure. So above the ice surface, the temperature might be 60 degrees centigrade minus, but at the base level of its weight is always the melting temperature, melting point. So it continues to melt and seep under the pressure into the rocks and crevices, with the result that the water, sometimes traveling under the surface, traveling for thousands of miles, re-emerges here and there on the mountain bases and becomes the support becomes a source of permanent support for life. But that is only in short. There is so much more to it. What does the ozone do in its creation? Why it is destroyed? The whole story of the system of watering by God, made by God, conceived by God, implemented by God, is enough to convince any sane man of the existence of God. And this is why the Surah Fatiha begins, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. If you don't contemplate on the system of Rabubiyyat, how can you benefit from Surah Fatiha? What praise can you what praise you can sing in relation to God? You only know words, Allah, Rahman, Rab, Alhamd. They don't mean anything unless you delve deeper into them and contemplate on the meaning they carry. It is then you are overawed with the majesty of the Lord, and at the end of these verses there comes Iyyaka na'budu. Having known you as you have introduced yourself, there is no way but to worship you, and Thee alone. And for that we know we do not have the strength to do it on our own. So Iyyaka nasta'in. Without your help nothing can happen. So Thee alone we seek, from Thee alone we seek assistance, help to make us worship you. Now this is the short 4 verses, the 3, 4, 5 verses of 4 verses or 5 of Surah Fatiha, which I have only introduced very briefly. So when you said God has to be introduced before you begin to praise Him and before you worship Him, God is not only introduced, the atmosphere is created. The emotional atmosphere within you is created so intensely, if you know what you are reading, that automatically that is the cry of your spirit and soul. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Thee alone shall we worship, but Thee alone shall we seek for assistance. Let it be sufficient for the time being, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
My name is Janae Shams and I'm from Washington DC Jamaat. My question is, when did Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam get his liberate slave Zaid?
Even you? Anybody who has got understood the meaning? Huh? Liberate his slaves?
Yeah.
I understand. Huh? Let's please. Hazrat Zaid, no, he was the slave only, the only slave he had. You see, Hazrat Zaid was always at liberty to leave him and be free. There was never a moment when he was compelled to be with the Holy Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him. But he knew that it was in his own interest to remain his slave, the slave of God. Now this is maybe a claim, just a claim, but it was proved by what I'm going to tell you in a fantastic way. Hazrat Zaid's parents, who were some noble people from Persia or somewhere, were people of great respect they commanded in their area, and very wealthy people in fact. They started tracing Hazrat Zaid and reached ultimately Medina, and found that Hazrat Zaid was a slave to Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or at Mecca, I don't remember where it happened, but exactly it happened like I'm going to tell you. They met Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, we introduce ourselves to be the parents of Zaid, your slave, and we have come to beg you of liberation of this slave. You liberate this son of ours. Rasulullah said, no problem whatsoever. He's yours, take him away. But let him decide for himself. So he called Zaid and told him, they are your parents. They have come to retrieve you, to take you back. He said, no way, it's impossible. After you, I know no parents. I love you more than everything else. So that is the point which I wanted to prove. As far as Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's attitude to Zaid was, that was an attitude of more than a father's attitude to his dear son. Otherwise, this could not have happened. How could Zaid love Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam more than his parents? If he had not treated him more kindly than any parents can treat his children. So he was always at liberty.
Thank
right?
You.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
My name is Hakeem Sabor Sadiq.
Right.
I'm from the Dayton Jamaat. I'm a new convert.
Yes.
And my question...
How much new?
2 months,
Huh?
Hazur. 2 months, Hazur.
Just 2 months.
Yes. My question concerns of the book, Philosophies of the Teachings of Islam,
That's right, yes.
by the promised Messiah, alayhi salam. In it, he addressed the 3 states of man, that being natural, moral, and spiritual,
That's right.
and also the 3 reforms.
Right.
My question, as a Muslim, not just an Ahmadi, but as a Muslim, am I striving for perfection in the spiritual state, or am I striving to reach an ideal state which resembles perfection?
I understood you up to the last sentence.
Am I striving for...
What exactly is the purpose of this question? What you want me to explain?
I would like for you to explain to me, am I striving as a Muslim, am I striving for spiritual perfection?
How can you achieve it?
How can I achieve it? That's the
That is exactly what has been discussed there in the book you're referring to.
Right.
That is why I was confused. If you have read it carefully, it is mentioned very clearly how you can do it. It's not just an academic statement of facts. It is a book of spiritual guidance as well. So throughout the book, Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ helps the reader to achieve this constant transfer from one state to another until he reaches the state of spirituality which is not followed by any other state, because that is the last, but it is a continuous state, endless state. Because spirituality is a journey into God. How you can achieve it? Simply I can tell you, Hazrat Masih al-Islam has repeatedly emphasized the role of prayer in in this book as well and elsewhere. So the best thing is to do what I just told the earlier questioner. You speak honestly to God and say, having learned of you, having known what you are, I want to worship you and you alone. When you do that, the next verse will tell you you can't without the help of Allah. So you add, help me please, help me God, to fulfill the requirements of worship. Having done that, another verse will follow. Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. Guide us to the path, the straight path. And when you reach there, immediately the purpose of your question will be resolved so clearly. Guide us to the right path. What is the right path? Of what? Sirat al-lazina an'amta alayhim. The path of those on whom you have bestowed favors earlier. Not of those who were also granted that path, but they deviated from it and were the object of wrath. So this is how you reach spiritual levels, all spiritual levels. Because Siratul Lazina Anamta Alayhim means the path of those upon whom you have bestowed spiritual favors. Inam means spiritual favors. These spiritual favors have been clearly defined and enumerated in another verse of Surah Nisa, which says, مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالصِّدِّيقِينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ. The people who are the recipients of favors of Allah are classified into four categories. The first, prophets of Allah. The second, the righteous, who are so righteous that Allah calls them to be righteous. And the third, martyrs in the path of Allah. And the fourth, ordinary, righteous people who are good and their way of life shuns evil and they try to practice goodness. The ordinary run of the true Muslims. These are the four stages of Inam. So they have been mentioned in Surah Fatiha, which you recite in every prayer. All spiritual progress can be reached to the very maximum because there is nothing beyond Nabuwwat, being Prophet of Allah. All spiritual progress can be reached through the journey in Surah Fatiha, through Surah Fatiha. All right?
Okay, just one quick follow-up question, please.
Okay, yes.
Of the communities that we come from all over the country, has had the opportunity to see Muslims from various sects, not just Ahmadi, Sunni, Nation of Islam, etc. As we go out and address the communities based on the philosophies of the teachings of Islam, how do we distinguish ourselves from the other Muslim communities?
It is with the help of the same verse which I just recited. You see that this verse informs us that if you truly obey Allah and Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah then you will be the only people who will be counted among those who are recipients of Allah's favors. This is the beginning of the verse. وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالصِّدِّيقِينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ وَحَسُنَ أُولَٰئِكَ رَفِيقًا. Whoever obeys Allah and Ar-Rasul Muhammad Rasulullah, it will be these alone who will be counted among those who receive favors of Allah. What favors of Allah? Minan Nabiyyina. They will be counted among the prophets, among Siddiq, among Shaheed, among Saleh. The major difference between us and them is that they believe that not even a subordinate prophet in Islam who is absolutely under the total command of the Quran and the Muhammad Rasulullah can ever come. So begin with this verse. Show them. You say something else, the Holy Quran tells me something else. It says all inam is now confined to the obedience of Allah and Muhammad Rasulullah. And all the inams which are mentioned in general are mentioned in detail in the same verse. Minan Nabiyina, the first is that of Nabuwat, prophethood. So if it had been closed forever, what would be the meaning of this verse? So the debate can begin with this. And what follows, there you can be helped by the study of Ahmadiyya literature on these controversial issues. And you can also listen to my videos or cassettes in which I have explained these aspects from every angle, and I hope they will be relayed here on your television system in due course. We're only waiting for people to buy their decoders and get settled and the decoder system to start working properly. Once it is done, then we propose to replay all my question answer sessions with errors, with English speaking, with the German speaking, with Dutch speaking, and so on and so forth, as a series right from the beginning for the benefit of American people. And we'll do it at a time when you generally listen to such programs or view such programs. So inshallah, if you find time for that, you will get answers to all the possible questions which may agitate your mind. Inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you, Azhar.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum wa
Wa alaikum salam.
Irfan al-Adin.
Fun?
Irfan al-Adin.
Of course I know Irfan.
Huzur, I have just two questions that are very related.
Just two.
Just two. And the first
one is?
The first one is in parasitology class. We've had some discussions about the eating of pork, and I tried to use some of the new arguments I learned from MTA, as well as Hazrat Masih Maud teaching that the physical, moral, and spiritual worlds are connected. I wanted to know, is there any evidence, one from the Holy Quran, and two from science, that what you eat physically is going to affect what your spiritual state, in the sense that those people who eat a lot of meat should be aggressive, and those who eat only vegetables may be more timid.
Now the question can be answered in detail, consuming so much time which we do not have. But I know you're a well-educated and intelligent boy. Forgive me if you don't like the term boy applicable to you. You see? Perhaps guy would be a better substitute. But anyway, my answer is that the Holy Quran has guided us in principles. And the most important thing to be noted about the diet of man is that God has created everything for the service of man. And among the animals which He has created, He has also mentioned their usage as flesh, the consumption of their flesh by humans. And also vegetations are mentioned, vegetables and fruits etc. are mentioned to serve the same cause. Now having done that, one thing becomes clear, that some animals were specifically created for the purpose of consumption of their meat. And it's not forbidden, number one. It must have some advantages, or Allah would not do that. Secondly, if you go back to the history of evolution, you will learn that the evolution has produced two types of animals. Those which are vegetarian and those which are carnivorous. And in man, all the qualities of animals spread throughout the animal kingdom are combined. And he is made a paragon of the ultimate achievements of evolution of life. In him is combined everything which was created and which reached its summit through the course of animal life. So the man should be provided with both the capabilities of surviving on vegetable as well as on meat. And he should be provided with the machination which is responsible for the assimilation of both meat and vegetable. If he is provided with that, then no man can say that to remain vegetarian is the better thing, or to remain a carnivorous is a better thing. Then comes the issue of our teeth, the way they are formed. There are molar teeth and the frontal teeth and the two, what do you call them?
Canines?
Fangs. No.
Canines. Incisors.
Not canine. Please.
Incisors?
Come here. This is a terminology because he is a specialist of teeth. He is a dental surgeon. So let me hear clearly what you say.
Bicuspid. Premolars or
Pre-
bicuspid.
Bicuspid.
Bicuspid
Bicuspid.
or premolars.
I think I better avoid this term. Although I study science so often, I like to, but never come across this term, bicuspid. Will you understand what he means by that?
I think that's the same as one of the molars. I thought it's incisors you wanted.
The second one.
The first central was the incisors, then the cuspid,
Incisors and then
the cuspids,
cuspids,
then bicuspids,
then
molars.
molars. And these you two,
Then the canine.
I don't like the term canine. That is why I'm intentionally avoiding it. But anyway, all types of teeth which are needed for eating flesh and masticating vegetable or meat and to bite things are provided to man. For what purpose? Not purposelessly. Then the Holy Quran says, Kulu washrabu wa la tusrifu, which God has created for you, eat of it and drink of it, but do not do excesses in that regard. Don't incline in one direction over much. So to be totally a vegetarian or to be totally as a carnivorous is not what is expected by God of man. Got it? Yet if you insist that you must grow fat on vegetable alone, go ahead and do it. Right?
I just don't see how...
What is the second question?
If with homosexuality, which is sown in pork consumption, our Jamaat's own book, and also I learned both from MTA and from our own book,
Yes.
Pork Consumption Disease, is the pig is a homosexual animal. Is there any way from the Holy Quran and from science we can show that by eating an animal that is homosexual, it would affect us or affect society?
Why should you need the reference to Quran when you observe what is happening? I first came across this question in the University of London in 1956 when we were sitting over a cup of coffee, some students, and they inquired from me the wisdom of prohibiting the use of flesh of pigs. I answered this question to some detail from this angle and that angle, and then I also added the possibility. I said maybe it is a protest against the vulgar habit of this animal which is against the direction of evolution. Sex was created for the set purpose of the survival of species and for no other purpose. The player element became dominant later in man when he was given the choice. And that choice, pulled him in the direction of enjoyment, which was only concomitant to sex, not the purpose of sex. Without it, man would have, abhorred sex, perhaps, because it is the pleasure for which he goes. He seeks pleasure, and in that process, accidents happen. So that is how the survival of human species is maintained and guaranteed. But the question is, the pleasure is the outcome of a need and necessity. The player cannot command the process of sex. It is an outcome, a requirement to keep the process alive. The purpose of sex is negated when you indulge in homosexuality. It's a denial of those means which were produced for the safety of species, for the continuity of species in animal kingdom as well as in man. This is the real philosophy of this prohibition. That is why the answer at the time of Gomorrah and other townships which were completely destroyed was this message. All right, if you're not interested in the survival of species, then be gone. And people have been raising this question, why not again? And that has come again as the same answer. This AIDS epidemic, which is spreading far and wide and underneath the surfaces, is eating up the human chances of survival without the man realizing what is happening to him. This is the same answer which was given at the time of Lot. All right, if this is what you want, then be not, disappear. So to discuss the issue of sex in relation to heterogeneous and other not what to call the homosexual and heterosexual terms. I didn't develop the subject to that extent, but in brief I knew this should be the answer. I said sex is created for a set purpose, and in the animal kingdom we observe the pig to be the outstanding animal who indulges in homosexuality. So there are two possibilities. Either that it is just a protest, just a reminder that these are the evil habits, shun the flesh and shun the habits. I said it is also likely that the eating of pork would remove one's aversion to these unnatural habits. And imperceptibly this flesh would influence his mind, his thinking. One girl shot up, said, what is the harm in this? I said, you have proved the point. The people who eat pork, they don't see any harm in it. That is what I was to prove. Everyone laughed and the tables were turned against her. So this is the reason. Already what we observe has happened. And yet you are wanting more arguments in favor of what has already happened. Thank you. I hope your interest in this question is only academic. Please. He has been playing me with this question so many times. So it was, I think, an apt remark in the end. Please.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah hazur. My name is Abdul Shakur Ahmed from Dayton, Jamaat, USA. My question is related to the sexual promiscuity here in the U.S. and throughout the world. as far as the sexually transmitted diseases, fornication and adultery, how do we implement or use the methods explained in the Holy Quran to check the rise and the vastness of these sins?
To check the sex of the unborn baby or what? So I thought what he said, the result of that, outcome of that. This is an epidemic, and this indicates man's moving away from the belief in God, and his sense of responsibility has already been corroded. When you do not really believe in God, only in name you believe in God, then you are never afraid of answerability. So this question of the existence of God is inseparably related to the belief in the hereafter and your accountability. When these two areas of belief are corroded, then there is no way you can stop this. Natural punishments take their course, but they are only indication of the wrath of Allah. Otherwise, they have never changed the course of human degradation. Start from the beginning of permissiveness in sex in the West, for instance. A time there was in America when gonorrhea was the main curse. And it was with some difficulty that ultimately a drug was invented which was called MB693, which was found to be so effective against gonorrhea. But little did the doctors know that gonorrhea was not cured, it had gone deeper into life. It turned into asthma, it turned into other glandular diseases, and it never left man alone afterwards. And it began to return for no reason whatsoever. Suddenly it would reappear. So they could only suppress it, they could not cure it. Then they thought anyway that they have succeeded, and everybody had a license again to do whatever he pleases. Then came syphilis, a most severely punishing disease. If you look at the faces of the syphilitic people, what it does to them, how it eats away the bones in the nose, in the face, what it does to the brain, what it does to the bones, and creates sores, ulcers which pass right through. And the fingers begin to crumble and drop. It was a horrid picture created by syphilis, and the society was still continuing with its licentiousness. But then the doctors came to their aid. They said, yes, syphilis can be cured if somebody is treated with penicillin for 30 days continuously, with no gap. It could cure syphilis. So they thought they were free of another punishing disease. But they never understood why it is always related to sex. Other diseases are not related to sex or any confined area of human activity. Common cold, influenza, they spread along, and they are not choosy in their victims. And these are strange sex-related diseases which never punish loyal couples of husband and wife. They bypass them. But nobody realized that it had a very positive message to be delivered. Then came herpes and sex-related herpes. It created havoc in the United States so much that nowhere the cases of such sex-related herpes were registered as in America. The problem with this herpes is It's a very painful and punishing disease, but it never leaves you. While the herpes is sister herpes, which is called herpes zoster, it appears along the edges of the nerves. It may occasionally call back at another time, but once a patient has recovered from herpes, he is free from it from afterwards. But not this. This sex-related herpes always returns, and is so infectious that when you think you are cured and you have indulgence, then you pass the virus on to the others and so on and so forth. In one study, they started with one girl from a school, investigation of whom she had met and this and that, and they started pursuing the line backwards. And they were amazed to find that almost at the 100th link, the chain reached back the same girl. She had initiated the course of infection, which made a round circle after infecting 99 other boys and girls back to her once again. So this is the herpes, sex-related herpes. It doesn't end. But people thought they had made some arrangements and they could at least mollify the suffering. Man didn't learn his lesson. Then comes AIDS, a punishment which has gone deep into life, and a punishment which has brought home the reality back to man, that what you thought was cure was not cure. So in America, there were cases which confounded the medical specialists of reappearance of syphilis, which they think they had done away with. Reappearance of syphilis only in AIDS patients, which had no history of syphilis prior to this. And when they investigated, they found that syphilis had gone deep into the ultimate cellular tissues and remained there locked in cellular tissues in a dormant stage. But this AIDS also reaches the very roots of life. So it shook it up and awoke it. And it came back into circulation of blood streams, etc. And the message is, it was again sex-related punishment. And if man does not listen to the voice of nature, if he doesn't observe this message and read the message, the end of the people of Lot will not be very far from mankind. So again, this subject is related specifically to homosexuality. See how the punishment is interconnected, interrelated with a deep system. And the AIDS virus otherwise is so weak and so, what should I say, fragile, that it can't survive a few seconds outside the bloodstream. In no way can it spread across without that particular crime. And it specifically hits at the homosexuals. If you don't read any order, any system, any message in that, what can I do about it then? Right? Yes. And the message of time. Only 10 minutes left to 10. We were supposed to bring this meeting to a close by 9:45. But I'll sit for a few more questions until 10 o'clock. All right?
Assalamu alaikum, Hazur.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Musafir Mohan from Los Angeles. My question is with regards to a painful chapter in Islamic history as outlined in the book Intrigues Against the Khilafat Rashida. With my limited...
Come closer to the microphone.
Sorry. should I repeat the first part?
No.
With my limited knowledge and listening to some of Huzur's sermons, I have been able to reconcile some of the issues that occurred in that book, but some of the incidents. However, there's one event that causes me a lot of trouble, and that is Allah promises to those who submit guidance and protection from fear and grief. But I don't understand how Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha would have raised an army even from misguidance from the mischief mongers against Hazrat Ali, who was a Khalifa that she should have been obeying. I don't understand Allah's promise for guidance to the true believer and this instant.
Now, what do you understand by the word guidance?
I take some references, like for example, to those who truly...
Unless your understanding of guidance is very limited, you can't understand the answer to this question. Now, you could not have been misled to read something which doesn't agree with your sensibilities in relation to Hazrat Aisha, Siddiqa radhiyallahu anha, and Hazrat Ali. The point is, the word guidance is, from the angle of God, the provision of all the possible elements required for man or woman to be guided by. There are other factors which can interfere with this course. Factors which sometimes are far deep in human psyche for men to analyze and determine the real cause. Intentions vary, and you cannot reach the inner recesses of intentions. So the facts appear and inferences could be drawn, right inference or wrong inference. Some are those who draw wrong inferences and they commit crime then, but guidance is there. Some who draw wrong inferences, but by their failure to understand the position, the situation, and they think they're right. So they could be proved wrong by history, but it is possible, it is real, that in the sight of Allah they would be just misguided. In that case, their guidance comes from Allah because the end of the righteous, their mistake is rectified before they die. And the promise of guidance should be read in, coupled with the prayer which God has taught us, Rabbana wa la tawaffana, Rabbana wa tawaffana ma'al abrar. What we require is, we may have committed mistakes, otherwise there will be no question of forgiveness. We seek forgiveness for our indulgences, but we pray, we beg of you to make us die among the pious. Now, if the end of Hazrat Aisha had been among the Khawarij, then your question would be valid. But if she realized her mistake and Hazrat Ali recognized the factors which had misled her, and he spent all her remaining life in obedience to Hazrat Ali, then where is the logic of your question that Allah promises to guide and He failed to guide? He did not.
I guess my understanding, what I was trying to say is that, of course, we are very limited in our piety, and so we may have...
I don't want to prolong this overmuch. What I saw, I have said. What I understood, I have told you. Now seek guidance from Allah. You believe in the guidance in the sense you believe. So if you are righteous, He will guide you.
Yes.
Okay?
Jazakallah.
Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum, Huzur. My name is Suhail Hussain from Boston.
Yes?
And my question, forgive me if you've answered this before, but my question is regarding estrogen replacement for ladies who no longer have their cycles. The reason I ask this is because many physicians recommend it, on the premise that it helps prevent bone loss and decreases heart disease in women who take it. But some other people argue that it goes against nature and it's unnatural. So, Huzur, I was wondering what you think on the subject.
What causes the bone loss and how it can be prevented and everything? But replacement therapy to make up for the loss of hormones? Yes, estrogen. After menopause. That is what I think I understood, but what is the question there? I can't understand the question. Huh?
Right, Huzur, would you support it? Or
Why are you worried about that?
nothing personal.
I assure you,
But
you will never reach that stage,
I hope not.
even if you live for 1,000 years to come.
Huzur, I'm studying medicine and
And you're not married either. Are you married?
no.
See? The irrelevance of this question to you. You are a man and you are not married and you are worried about menopause. Imagine.
You know, Huzur, I knew you would say that, so
Let
I
them
tried
do whatever they
to
require
practice the question.
to restore their health. Any effort on the part of physicians to restore health and to remove suffering is not against the grain of nature. It is in line with the purpose of creation. All human progress is achieved because he tried to make life comfortable. And this is what science is. So why do you interfere with the process of some poor ladies in menopause while you are not related to that anyway? Thank you. Please. Last few minutes left.
Assalamualaikum Zuhur.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Now residing in New York. On the face of the London Mosque, Patna, there is in bold letters inscribed Amanast Dar Makane Muhabbat Saraima. Whereas in the writings of Hazrat Masih Maud we find it as Amanast Dar Mukame Muhabbat Saraima.
You see,
Why
this
this
issue of what actually is the word used by Masih Maud is not as simple as that. I know you must have read this, what you say, in some of the books of Masih Maud. But sometimes in earlier versions, there is one word used, while in another version, another word is used. And in some verses of Hazrat Masih Maud, when we investigate as to which one was the original one, we found many such cases in which it seemed that Hazrat Masih Maud permitted, it was not a mistake, permitted the replacement of one word by another to enlarge the meaning and to direct the mind to another possible meaning. So makan and maqam are two different things, although they are very similar and close. So in some of the recitations it could be maqam, in some of the recitations of the same could be muqam. That is why there are many versions in the Quran as well, in the Qiraat of Quran. They are not alternatives as such, but they are only indicators towards another meaning. On this issue I have yet to investigate, but I have only spoken in principles. It is not essential that somebody committed a mistake there. It is possible that you find both versions as valid, the one you read and the one which is printed on the mosque. Right?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Another question is
about the time.
I beg your pardon.
Thank you. It's 10 o'clock, but not by my watch. You can come back, please. Oh, you have come. Okay. One question is enough. There is another question. You come, please. By my watch, there is 1.5 minutes to go.
My name Diya from Palestine.
From?
Palestine.
Yes. Which place?
Jaffa.
Which city in Pakistan?
Palestine.
Right.
Palestine.
Palestine. I thought Pakistan. I got it now. Which city in Palestine?
Yes.
Which city in Palestine?
Jaffa. I studied Ahmadiyya in the last 5 years, and I came from a Muslim family. Then after studying the Ahmadiyya, I did istikhara to God to show me the right path. So I found this is the right path for me, but I cannot tell the people around me, my friend and my family, that
that is the main problem you're facing.
Right. So I got the answer, from.
Is that the question you want to ask? How to go about it?
Actually, as the most important thing is my father. He's the one I cannot tell him.
You see, the Holy Quran has already answered your question. The Holy Quran tells us that the example of believers is either like that of the wife of Pharaoh or that of Hazrat Maryam. Now, what is the message? Hazrat Asya is the name is said to be Asya. The wife of Pharaoh was under the most despotic, lived under the most despotic rule and authority of Pharaoh, who was a committed enemy of Moses. Yet she believed in him and guarded her faith despite whatever might have happened to her. That is the first example. Allah requires better things from believers than a poor woman under the Pharaoh's rule. And the second example is that of Mary, who guarded her chastity under extreme pressures to the contrary. Even when an angel appeared to her in the form of a human, attractive human being, you know the answer recorded by the Quran is, in no way can I permit you to do anything until he explained himself that I am only a messenger of God to deliver this message. I don't mean any evil. So that is how she guarded her chastity. And then a spiritual birth took place from within her. So the Holy Quran requires the believers to be either at least brave and loyal to God to the degree of Asya. They should not care of what may happen to them with regard to their faith. And second, more than that, Allah requires them to give birth to a spiritual child from within them and have a new creation, like Mary gave a new creation of the birth of Jesus Christ. So this, in short, is the answer to the questions of all new converts who face such difficulties. They should try the chastity of their faith. They should defend the chastity of their faith. They should defend the right of the choice of religion against all odds. But this is a different age. You can run away from it. You can avoid situations. While in the old age, a poor woman married to a pharaoh was totally helpless. Yet what she must have suffered. The Holy Quran tells us that she prayed to God, "Oh God, save me from the cruelties of this man and build me a house in heaven." So that is all I can advise you in the words of the Quran. And pray to Allah, He'll give you strength. And why don't you beg Allah for the conversion of your father?
I already prayed and asked God to show. Okay. I want everybody in my family to know that
I know that, but I'm just giving you a general answer. You have chosen a path of suffering. This is the simple case. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had chosen a path of suffering. When he did it, he was ready for all the music of sub-music, in the sense that all the suffering which was heaped upon him by the enemies. So when you consciously, knowingly adopt a course of truth, you have to pay the price. Don't you?
Yes.
Allah bless you. Thank you.
I have another question. I did not sign the Ba'ath form. Is that something important? So I do believe in Ahmadiyya in my heart.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
But study some more.
Okay.
The knowledge is the source of confidence and gives strength. Sometimes you find weakness because of lack of knowledge. Knowledge is power. Learn more about Ahmadiyya, read more of the Arabic literature we have so far created for the benefit of Arabs, and inshallah with the passage of time you will become strong enough to withstand all contrary pressures. Thank you. Now the azan please. As-salam.